This video was brought to you by NCIX. Great technology, selection, and service.
Hello everyone, we got another Raven chassis from SilverStone that looks the part of the Raven with those accentuated angles and that armored feel that the series has always carried. So this is the Raven 5, priced at $115, a mid-tower companion that SilverStone is really proud of, with much reduced volume compared to the first Raven, yet with the same rotated motherboard design to complement the cooling. And I'm going to say this up front, the Raven 5 is not meant to do everything well, and it sure doesn't. But instead, it's a chassis that's not afraid to be unique, and those who can keep the limitations in mind are bound to avoid disappointment and actually encounter satisfying results. Now, the exterior plastics are just plain plastics, nothing rubberized here, and it brings the cheap feeling to the case. The side window is one of the things they have always misplaced, as it reveals unnecessary internals, and the window on our sample wasn't fully secured and rattled with slight knock or vibration of the case. At the rear we get ventilation for your power supply, notice missing filter, but no worries, is actually included in the accessory pouch, and it is magnetic, so just simply attach to the case and remove for cleaning as needed. The Raven 5 is well elevated with rubberized case feet, and notice the large dust filter spanning the entire floor that's conveniently removed from the front, behind which we get the stars of the show. These are dual 180mm air penetrators with outstanding CFM and directional airflow, although they are a little bit loud. And since hot air rises, the Raven series has always utilized this one-directional airflow tunnel for outstanding thermals, intake at the bottom and exhaust at the top. Very simple. There are mounting holes for triple 120mm fans in case you'd want to install a water cooler, but we would advise against, as the sole reasoning behind this impressive cooling are those air penetrators. Coming to the top, we find a removable cover with large ventilation but no dust filter here. PR buttons at the front, plus behind this rubber cover are a pair of USB 3 ports and audio jacks. There are two fan control switches up top for low and high speed, although placement of these is uncomfortable. Exterior location would make more sense. This is an ATX mid-tower with only 7 PCI slots and an exhaust fan mount, although with internal mounting only, as the frame restricts clearance anything above it. Given the rotated motherboard design, all of the cable will exit through the top and routed behind the chassis, and while this design allows outstanding cooling, bear in mind the uncomfortable nature of needing to take off the top cover every time you need to access your rear I/O slots, or the top I/O slots. And this space also adds about 2.5 inches to the height of the chassis, making it taller, but also notice these handles for really simple transportation. Each side panel removes with this release mechanism, and then you just pull upwards, but the side panels are really stiff inside the housing, so simple pull will not get the job done, at least on our sample. I had to take off the rear panel off camera with the case on the floor, so I really would prefer simple thumb screws for the job. And so this is the layout we're sort of used to, with front intake fans, and SilverStone has gone ahead and rotated the motherboard 90 degrees to take advantage of rising hot air. The internals are a little cramped considering it's only 61 liters in volume, and also notice how the rear is slightly elevated for this angled look. I actually really like that. Now, there are a few compromises here, like the power supply must not exceed 170mm in length if you still want to utilize the 3.5-inch drive cage that is right below it. The cage does support 2 drives, and I'm surprised this wasn't made toolless, as there are mounting holes up top and below the cage to secure your drives, which is very inconvenient. The cage is removable, that would allow longer power supplies, but this gets rid of any 3.5-inch storage potential. So choose appropriate power supply for your build in order to avoid this sort of compromise. As for GPU clearance, there is just over 12 inches available, and I would say blower style GPUs are just slightly more ideal to complement airflow direction. At the rear, we find 2 SSD mounts with enough spacing for connectivity, an optical drive mount, as the Raven 5 actually has a stealth opening at the front, so those still using discs are not forgotten. And checking out the build with appropriate hardware, the Raven 5 was actually pretty straightforward to work in. With our 160mm power supply, cabling exits through the large opening right beside it, plus there's another cutout for the large 24-pin cable. And I use this space also for the PCI Express cables, and that's one thing to keep in mind. Route your graphics cables away from the GPU cooler side, and also make sure that they don't obstruct airflow for the CPU cooler either. I did have to pre-route the 8-pin CPU cable right behind the motherboard before installation, but that's not really a big deal. And while it's not the easiest cable management around, you'll do fine with some patience. CPU towers up to 160mm in height are supported, and going with some Noctua heatsinks is probably the ideal configuration here to take advantage of this excellent air tunnel. And it's when we come around to the back, things get a little more hectic as there's nowhere to really tuck your cables, and this is where SilverStone needs to get back to the drawing board. As you can see, the cables are a little bit out of control and I had trouble closing the side panel. Now coming back to that window, as you can see, it could be less revealing at the bottom and moved slightly up for a better presentation of your hardware. And what we have here with the Raven 5 is an absolute cooling powerhouse with just 2 fans thanks to the rotated motherboard design. I found working within the limited space surprisingly without too much hassle, and I appreciate easy removable dust filters at the rear and the bottom. Now I've mentioned it earlier that the Raven isn't designed to do it all, but I feel like the drive cage could have been different to allow longer power supplies to be installed regardless, as that is the compromise you have to face. The exterior plastics I wish were coated with something that presents a more quality feel, and the fan controllers are internal, so not as accessible as they could have been. And I would like to see top dust filter as the dust settles in when the machine is powered off. And this Raven is not entirely unique, as it is a 5th iteration within the series, but it does invite minimalistic air-cooled builds where thermals are a priority. And it's only when considering the multitude of cases in this price bracket, the Raven flies away into the abyss with too many compromises and limitations for the price. But what do you guys think of this latest Raven? Does it excite you because of the form and internal layout? Or is just old news and just another Raven? Let us know by commenting below, would love to hear what you think. Don't forget to subscribe for more similar content. The Entolux is coming soon, and we'll see you in the next one.